Maybe it's going to announcement that this meeting is being recorded. If any member of the public would like to sign up please do so via the chat if you are joining us online. And if you are in person, there's a seat on the wall. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the VPL Strategic Planning Committee. We're really delighted to have you here on this beautiful March day. Also really excited to introduce the Margaret Sullivan and Gensler team who've been helping to begin to shepherd us and facilitate this exciting discussion. So I'd like to go around and do introductions, but are we first meant to do roll call? Pamela, what's the appropriate next step here?
Yes.
Sure.
You know what, when you are doing that, we just will say hello to our. Okay, perfect.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Devere. I'm the city staff of the library. So I'm not part of the committee. I just wanted to say hello and thank you for your time with us. You don't need to, what I would say. Just want to say hello and thank you for being here. All your thoughts and ideas are appreciated. And I'm Lisa Pollock. I'm the Chief of Communications and Strategy at the library. Sarah and I are co-leads on this project. And wanted to say thank you so much for your time. We, as the leadership team, have done an iteration of this exercise. Fasten your seatbelts. You are in for an amazing ride. So we're very grateful to the team that gets our MSS and enjoy your afternoon. I'm jealous.
Would you like me to do the roll call now?
Yes, please, Pamela.
Okay. I'm just gonna say your last names for the record, just acknowledge. Berman.
Here.
Brooks.
Here.
Cronin.
Here.
Ms. Crockett will be absent due to a conflict with work. Dorsey.
Present.
Lemon.
Here.
Lou.
Here.
Masso.
Here.
Seki.
Here.
Sora.
Here.
Westbrook.
Here.
Thank you, we have a quorum. We are also joined by our chair, Priscilla Douglas, and online we have our vice chair of the board.
Excellent. And Pamela, I think we may have seen it very quickly, but do you mind just going back to the statement at the beginning? I just wanted to also highlight the opening statement that comes in the next slide. Sorry, Margaret, for ordering you here. In any case.
It's that one. Right there.
Okay, perfect. So just in short, I'd like to acknowledge that the trustees of the library affirm our commitment to racial equity and to the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion. I won't read this entire statement, but I would just underscore that these are principles that we all on the board hold very strongly, and are delighted to have everyone here. So with that, perhaps Pamela, if we're, I think there's one other formality to address, then we can go around and do directions. We had submitted the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was quite a while ago, as part of the package that people received. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're good. The minutes are approved. So I would just suggest that we take a very brief few minutes to go around and do introductions, because not everyone knows each other. And Margaret, if I might put you on the spot to go first, I'd be grateful.
Yes, welcome to this afternoon. You all are just in such a great privileged position to be thought leaders and contributors to the strategic work. You know, I think strategy is an opportunity to shape an organization, to shape a city. I was telling someone about what Margaret Sullivan Studio does, and they were like, "You're like the library shapeshifter." So with that, my background is that I'm actually trained as an architect. And for the past 30 years, I've been working as an expert in the public library world. And it has enabled me to grow up with other leaders in the library profession that really were reorienting their work around social impact and community-driven processes, inclusive processes. And from that work, we've started to do a lot of strategy over the past 10 years since Margaret Sullivan Studio has been in existence. And we are a firm based in New York City with about 15 folks. And we always partner with local strategists and designers to also bring to life the local community and expertise. And we've been working with Gensler, San Francisco Public Library, Enos Free Library around the country on some really wonderful strategies. So for that.
Hi, as Mary Corcoran, some of you, we met at the board meeting looking to speak. I'm a strategy lead with Gensler based in Boston. Conversation.
I'm Patricia Norwood, I lead our strategy team, Gensler, Boston office, and this is over here.
I'm Paula Staten, I'm the Executive Director of the Boston Public Library Fund, which is the philanthropic arm of the Boston Public Library.
And I'm gonna tag on to one of the our agenda items, and as y'all introduce yourself, also tell us what you think is the great strength of the Boston Public Library.
Wow, there's so many. I would say literacy in all its forms.
Jonathan Sora from Boston Magazine. I'm partial to the special collections, but just the incredible depth of beyond what people normally think of as the library, including things like the artworks in the library, the architecture and everything. And that includes all 24 branches. 25, excuse me, all 24 other branches.
Yeah.
Chinatown is temporary, so that's your out.
Thank you, David. Probably in
We know that.
or no, Literary Lights, which is the associates.
Cheryl Cronin, I'm on the library's board of trustees. My day job, I'm the CEO of the Boston Public Market. And I would say the joy as I live right near here and raised my 3 kids here. And I think the joy, the best part of the library is it shows kids the joy of books and reading. For me, that's what the library resonates with.
Nice. Good afternoon, Jose Masso. I'm the vice chair of this committee under the direction of a esteemed leader and a board member. Joy for me, I think, is the places that we're at in the communities, the spaces that we occupy, and the people both who provide and benefit from what the library does all throughout the city of Boston, and the intersectionality of all those things that we speak of.
Thanks very much, Jose. Christian Westra, I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. I also serve on the board of the Lowenthal Mapp and Education Center. And I'm a lawyer at Ropes and Gray. I think to me, there are many great things about the library, and I have 3 young children, so Cheryl's comments certainly resonated. But I like the fact, and it stays in my mind that the Gensler Margaret Sullivan team is very focused on the library as part of the 15-minute city concept. And I see Jose has houses for the people on his desk in front of him. To me, the library is a way of knitting together communities and fostering social infrastructure is a really compelling idea.
Sorry. Apparently chat is disabled in the meeting, so everyone was looking to be able to participate, at least. Hi, David Leonard, president of the Boston Public Library. Position that I still pinch myself every day that I get to help lead this institution forward. I think today's meeting is very pivotal in this phase 1 of the strategic planning process, because it's our first opportunity to complete the circle of the main stakeholders, if you will, bringing together some representatives of leadership, trustee members, and our thought leader partners who are part of this committee. So it's a really important milestone just to recognize. You can't ask me to just pick one thing.
Working with the trustees.
Yes. Especially Joe Burke. I will cite the notion that the library can have such diverse impact on individual lives at moments that matter to them, and that means entirely different things to so many people, is just a really special quality.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Colford. I'm the Director of Library Services here in the library, and for me, there are so many, but for me, it's the accessibility, which says free to all on the top of the door. It's how we serve, and we're so willing to serve anyone who wants to be.
I'm Priscilla Douglas. I'm Chair of the Board and honored to hold that position. The library for me is a place for people to be inspired, to dream, and have a forum to realize their greatest ambitions.
Ray Lou, I'm one of the newest trustees, I guess, as of a few months ago, so I'm honored to be here and specifically on this committee. My day job is a physician at MGH, and I also run an international consulting firm at Master Rhythm, so enjoy the strategic planning process and look forward to it very much. So, I'm both new to the library, but I've been coming here since my whole life as a sort of college student in Boston. I love the duality of both the physicality of sort of the places for community. A day like today, when it's rainy, I just walk in, I just see all these people working and talking to each other, and just amazing sort of just like the entrance. But also the duality of the digital part. I enjoy sort of going through and just having books and vacations or trips just need to access libraries.
Good afternoon, my name is Heidi Brooks, she series pronouns. I am a resident of JP and I feel like my day job is in public health. But I have always enjoyed libraries as this last public space that anybody can go to. And it's been, my interest in them has been kind of reinvigorated with children who are now teenagers, but who for them, it was like the first place they could go independently after I've been taking them all those times. And so I appreciate the physical space. And then certainly during the pandemic, got really familiar as we all with all of the digital offerings and all of those ways that it is a real community library community hub. So much of what people are
Extends beyond its walls.
I'm Joe Berman, and I currently am David's favorite trustee. I just learned today. I wear some, right? My day job is I'm a lawyer. I'm the general counsel of the Board of Bar Overseers, which is the disciplinary board of lawyers in Massachusetts. But when I'm not doing that, I am a library trustee. I'm chair of the Special Collections Committee. I also am on the board of the Associates of the Boston Public Library. Jonathan, we're having literary lights on Sunday, as you probably know. And this is, I'll just say, my third meeting in 3 days at the library. So I'm very busy between my different commitments. Now, my favorite thing, although I'm very deep in special collections, and obviously that's a real labor of love for me with the Associates, I have to say that I think one of the things that always resonates for me is the branches, and a couple of people mentioned that, and people have heard me say this before, and I apologize if I repeat myself, but one of the most fun things I've done as a trustee since joining a few years ago was the opportunity to go to various reopenings of branches that had been closed for renovation, and you open them. You know, we're in every neighborhood in Boston, and to see the joy on people when they get to go into a newly renovated, beautiful space is so important, and they really are hubs for each neighborhood and each community, and I think that's really.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ron Dorsey, committee member. I am on the team at Eastern Bank Foundation, and I'm former chief of education for the city of Boston. I think two favorite things about the library that are related. One is its enterprise and leadership. And I think as a result, it's probably one of the more change embracing and adaptive civic organizations in the city. And that's rare for, I think, a public institution.
It's probably affirming to hear because it is rare.
How did Ron get two favorite things?
And then just to recognize the other two we have in the room, we've got Holly Jin from the Gensler team as well, behind taking notes. You'll meet her in the breakouts, and Pamela in the chat and keeping us in line.
Did everyone want to say something?
She is in the chat. Evelyn, would you like to, I turned your mic on if you wanted to say anything more as well.
Hi, yes, I'm here. And the chat is open, thank you.
Want to introduce yourself, everyone, and say what your favorite thing about the BPL is?
I'm a member of the public, but yes, I'll be happy to. I'm the vice chair for the board. I'm also chair for finance and audit, as well as the fellows program. And, you know, the library is a community space, is a place for, you know, opening your mind and also be community gathering. That is what, you know, people really in the city have said to us. So they appreciate all the treasures that we have and the ability to, you know, to come and be in community at the library. And thank you all for doing this meeting.
Finishing sentence. All right, so this is what we're gonna do to you all today. It'll be fine. We're doing 2.5 hours. Some parts will be us presenting to you, bringing you up to speed, for those of you who were at some of the other workshops. Maybe some repeats here, but just to make sure, as David was mentioning, this is our stakeholder group, and we're looking forward to layering your input on top of what we've heard from BPL leadership and staff. Run-up show for today. Bit more listening at the beginning. We'll tell you about the overall strategic planning process, where we are in the process, what's coming up next. Then we'll be doing an activity about the role and purpose of the library. We'll explain that as we get there. Talking about where we can grow, where our impact is, building upon some of the insights from the round robin just now. And then also saving some time to talk about community partners and how we make sure that groups are engaged in this process. It's a long delay. There we go. It's mainly because my laptop is at the back of the room. I just have to make sure we're going in. So many of you may have seen our roadmap already. I'll just touch on this briefly. It is small on the screen, that we will share it out following the meeting. But broad strokes, we are currently in our first phase, visioning, discovery, having our initial conversations with the stakeholder groups that are listed over here. We've completed some workshops day-long workshops with staff and BPL leadership. We're now meeting with the Strategic Planning Committee at long last here. And we are starting to, right now we're widening our scope, getting in all the information that we can with the aim of sort of narrowing that down as we go. This initial findings phase will continue into the spring. And we'll do another sequence of workshops to bring those findings back to these groups and continue the discussion, including this group as well. This is our first engagement with you. We are hoping to meet again towards the end of April, and then we'll determine the best times for engagement 3 and 4. I think we've received some feedback that maybe this one needs to snug up earlier in the summer, but we'll get back to you on sort of where these land. But our next conversation will be in a month or so. Okay, and then planning, sort of our summer, our mandate as your strategic planning partners. This is when we start to nail down the plan, co-create it with the groups that we're engaging with. And then as we come into the fall, more narrowed down into this is where we're headed and how should we do it, more implementation conversations at the end. Anything to add to that? Perfect. And again, I will send out this diagram because we'll have earned a couple more check marks today as well.
Yeah, that's our, just to say it, if you go back to that slide briefly. Yep. We've met, or you've met with the BPL leadership and staff. Mm-hmm. We're obviously meeting now with the Strategic Planning Committee. Yep. The group will see that we have not yet met with the various affiliate groups, the associates, the fund, the Leavenworth Mountain Education Center, nor have we yet met with City of Boston leadership or certain other community stakeholders. So I think there are others who will be providing input, but that's where things stand right now.
And regarding the BPL fund, I know there's a few members in here as well, MAPS and the associates, we are currently scheduling to have these conversations in April, in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Ryan.
Mm-hmm. The next slide is an overview, zooming into the workshops with this group and the intent of the sequence of 4 workshops that we'll be scheduling. Do you want to speak to some of this?
Yeah, so our work really is designed as a co-creation strategy. The first two workshop tranches, or we have a leadership workshop and a staff engagement workshop. Leadership's role is to help develop a vision. The staff working group, they learn how to engage with one-on-one conversations with community members. So they're pulling in information from the community while leadership is visioning. In the second workshop, the staff takes the information that they gleaned from the community members and starts to make sense of it. The leadership is also evolving the vision. And so in workshop number 3, these merge to envision new services and new possibilities while we're also shaping out the strategic framework together. And then by workshop 4, that consensus has been developed, and there's an invigorated workshop around implementation.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear. Who purchased it? This was or is this more general?
This is more general, right? So this is what's happening in the background with the staff and leadership, and
Okay.
all of the inputs are coming into these workshop processes co-created with the BPL staff and leadership working groups.
And the themes of our 4 workshops will mirror these with the added piece, and you'll see some of this today, of we'll be bringing the findings from the staff and leadership workshops to our conversations, so we're building upon those as we
Could you just go back and say what's the purpose of the strategic plan and the charts that is the big overarching umbrellas? I think that might be helpful for this group, because we haven't been together.
just bear with me, we've introduced their team.
Yeah.
So we're happy to speak to that.
Yeah, so this set of slides is speaking to what is the purpose of a strategic plan for Contemporary Library today, and we're using some case studies to articulate that. So our methodology, who did their reading? It's okay if you didn't. We have our reading, we gave some readings in our agenda, but you can, it can be homework for after this session as well. But one of the readings is from the Aspen Institute Reimagining the Public Library. So that's been a Bible for many of us through the years. And so our methodology is informed by the Aspen Institute's Reimagining the Public Library that strongly challenged us in the library industry to align our library aspirations and strategies with community aspirations and impact. So this is at the highest level in city government to the community members. We say grassroots and grass tops. So that was that challenge. The second is to create a compelling and essential role and purpose of the public library, and that, you know, is the mission. What is our special sauce that we bring forth and contribute to those city alignment goals? It challenged us to center communities in every decision, and then also to Paula's, I think, championing, making sure that we're creating a sustainable and diversified funding model for long-term sustainability. So our methodology is rooted in that, and it results in a flexible strategic framework because the conditions around us are changing so rapidly that the organization needs to be responsive. Strengthen strategic partnerships because we know we can't do this work alone. It encourages, and our process builds in that staff embrace a growth mindset. And then finally, reorients our organization for collective impact, not just for working together, but also bringing in sophisticated assessment and measurement and metrics tools to measure our success within the larger educational, social, economic goals that we share among our partners in the city. Any questions here?
You may get to it, but either in the previous slides or here, I guess, I assume early in the process, there's an element around sort of what are the externalities, right? What's the context that we're all living in? Is that sort of early, like which one of those bullet points? They're sort of understanding.
The community context?
It's community within Boston, but also to point of aspects to, so what's happening in libraries.
Right. Introducing trends. Right, exactly. Yeah, our methodology does, so around that, create a compelling and essential role and purpose. Within that, it's a study of research of what are trends happening across the industry, what are trends happening with other industries that are doing work in education. So yes, that is, we bring that into the process as well.
Can I just ask Priscilla's question a slightly different way? In 2 sentences, what problem are we looking to solve?
That is why we're here. Do y'all want to speak to that?
I mean, I think it is to have the guiding document that will shape the work and focus of the library for whether that's 3, 5, or 10 years in varying degrees of specificity. You know, that is what we are looking for. And I think in the intent, borrow Priscilla's words, is that in doing so, we become the leading, if not the leading 21st century modern public library.
And we don't have that now.
Well, the last time we did that was
Yeah.
2012, and we have,
Yeah, I just
I mean,
wanted to.
we're doing it as we
No, I
run
know
our
that.
job,
I'm
but,
more-
right.
Yeah,
I
just,
think it also allows us, the strategic plan to give us focus as well,
Yeah.
because libraries have a tendency to want to do everything.
yeah.
And then the strategic plan helps us to focus in on what the community is looking for, our position with all of our constituents.
Good. I totally support that. After 12 years, the time is right to
Yes.
try to solve the problems.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's amazing if you look back at the Compass Plan and see that the very general principles are, you know, we might use slightly different language, but the general principles are still vibrant and live. But in terms of, you know, the world, to Ray's point about the context around us, this is a very different world. You know, post the onset of the internet and 30 years of technological connectivity, through a pandemic, through what is now a fractured society around economic, social, political issues that we could all speak to. And the role of the library in those contexts, I think, challenges us in a very different way than, you know, 2009. Some of those were present, but not at the scale that they are today. I also think we have a stronger sense that libraries are
One of the ways that we've been talking about it is that we hope it'll give you how to prioritize. And sometimes, you know, strategies, knowing what you're going to do. Now, how do, I think that's our measure of success, is that there are lots of statements, I think the introductions give a sense, right? The breadth of things the Boston Public Library is going to do. If we're just putting that back, not really shifted the needle much. I think that's how do you make this actionable to help say, within this realm, what are we prioritizing? And maybe that looks different by different branch. I think understand in the context of Boston, there may not be one solution for the one role. But how do you give a toolkit that enables, you know, Roxbury to say, we're doing this, JP saying, we're gonna do that, and be based on a common framework. So I think what we're seeing is measure of success is it gives direction into what you prioritize and what you don't. And then not so fluffy. That's like it does everything and has this.
Great, that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's right, Patricia, and I know Margaret, you and I were talking before about the Compass Plan and its assets and liabilities, if you will. I think it's fair to say, Cheryl, that if this plan that we're eventually going to create is not sufficiently granular and not sufficiently directed, it's going to be a failure. I think we can't simply settle on something that is at such a level of abstraction that it's not useful, and we've all talked about that. I think it's something that we focus on.
I mean, two key.
Ronnie, do you have a comment too?
I'm just gonna piggyback on your comment. The detail may be what makes it utilitarian, but I think we want to figure out what other elements give it a lot of utility. I've actually seen very few strategic plans that organizations use well and have become a Bible, become a real tool. So I think if we create something that is a real tool for the organization, it's been a huge success. And again, something real.
I think there, no, go ahead, yeah.
I was intrigued by on the previous slide, the collective impact element. Can you say more about that? I'm very familiar with the model, but not in a strategic plan for the individual organization.
Oh, my gut spine. Collective impact is I think it's a huge opportunity that you all have, and particularly urban libraries have, to really embrace, because you are so well positioned to be a catalyst of an ecosystem and really, the social infrastructure piece. As you know, collective impact is not an easy task, and it takes a tremendous amount of trust among the organizations that embrace it. But the notion of collective impact as an opportunity for the public library and the community to lead, catalyze, and really leverage is something that we introduce in the strategic planning process. You all are the beginning of that process because you all represent the network and the ecosystem in the city. But I think in the process, we will engage with you all to take it forward in a way that makes sense for Boston Public Library.
So the idea is that BPL would be like the backbone organization?
Well, I think that's where the process helps to generate where BPL likes to, feels comfortable fitting now and in the future. Because being a backbone organization in the traditional sense of collective impact has its pros and cons, cautionary tales. So, but this process encourages the work to bring in collective impact as a theory and approach for this work because of the strengths of a public library system being in every neighborhood, having trusted relationships, really bringing forth those values of seeing every single person as a person of potential. So they're just real strengths in bringing that to this work.
I have 3 points. So the one on this is really, I think, the arc of public libraries over the last 15 to 20 years is from moving from more of an inwardly looking, introverted organization, even though you see that in our buildings, to much more of one of community outreach. And piece of this is doing program development with communities, as opposed to simply for communities, and how that shows up as a philosophy of how we are in our society. So I think it's not only the case that we want the library to have a relevance to individual visitors, patrons, and users, but that the city is somehow better because it has the Boston Public Library in it. And those 2 points together would be my take on where there's opportunity to see the collective impact methodology show up. But that's a lot easier to say than it is to do and to change a 175-year-old organization with hard bones into that more agile community collaborative approach. I think the earlier 2 points I wanted to make was that we need a document that can describe why the transformation and renovation of the McKim building belongs in this future envisioning of the Boston Public Library and the impact that we can have, while at the same time ensuring that our branches, our 24 plus 1 in temporary, 25 branches and 26 locations, have an outward looking dimension to their work that is about program outreach, community engagement in a way that is more than just simply, yes, you're welcome. It's free to all, you can come in, but we're here. No, we're actively engaged with the communities. And so I think there's opportunity for those principles to show up in a way that gives guidance to staff, to trustees about how we will do our work differently over the next 10 years than we have over the last 10 years.
And more impactfully.
And what I really believe and why this meeting is important and this committee is so important is that each of you are ambassadors. You're out talking to members of your groups and your networks. And when they say to you, hey, the library's doing strategic planning, what's the goal? I would hope that each one of us would be saying the same thing, which is, to be a premier urban library, and they say, well, what does that mean? And we would have that criteria at the tip of our tongues to be able to say, this is the criteria and here's how it's expressed. So to me, these conversations that we're going to be having, as well as all the data, as we educate each ourselves about the various studies and come together in this group to discuss, we have a common framework. That's what I think is really the power of these conversations that we're gonna be having. Does that match?
Excellent.
Yeah.
So because we're at that funnel of information gathering, we always say, particularly for the staff working groups, this can feel like the messy middle. It can feel like the messy middle for a while. But as this iterative process develops over the next 9 months, that strategic plan will start to take shape. And you all know this, we're already saying this, a strategic plan is a what and an aspirational why, a vision for the community, a vision for the library system. And it is not a tactical plan or a day-to-day operation. It's not a how-to.
And by long-term, what do you mean by that? What's the definition of long-term?
For the sets the long-term direction. I think sets, that is another good question for you all as to what is the time horizon. And I will say, I'm going to give you some case studies in a second, but we just completed the San Francisco Public Library strategic plan. And they did not define what their time horizon was until about the 11th hour, which was really interesting. So I think that is a question that we will continue to visit in the process. But I think this charge has been 5 to 10 years.
It's a question, we agree it's a question. My personal belief is 3 years is too short, because it takes us a long time to do our bigger projects. But I think we can have greater specificity for a 3-year horizon. That specificity becomes less defined when you get to the 5-year. And I think the 5 to 10 year arc should be present, even if it's not so I don't know. So is it 3 years? It's more than 3 years. 10 years is a very long time for a strategic plan, but there are some key projects, such as a transformation of the McKim building, that will take us that long.
Right.
Because we have to raise the money, we have to get the city's commitment, we have to vision what we need from new staff leadership, and so on and so forth. So
I think some of it is dependent upon the outcomes that you define. They may sequence differently, but if you define generational outcomes in a 3-year plan, you've already set yourself up for failure. But if you only define generational outcomes, that may not be enough guidance for you to figure out how to sequence your work in the near term.
And the other thing is we are still learning about the current state of the organization. So where you all are now to where you want to go also plays into that commitment as well.
What is the common market practice? Is it often 10 years?
So what we have been seeing with the work we've been doing recently is that it's about 3 years to really invest in getting the machine running, and 5 years is the mark when the machine runs. And the goal that we have a bias that we would have for you all is that this strategy will take you into the next century, but that it is the roots that really form how you evolve, so that you're not in an iterative state of strategy every 5 years where something's new, but we're working to really build a great foundational root that the tree grows from.
Yeah, I think I agree with David. I think we have to at least get through the McKim capital project. I think we should also consider the 400th anniversary of Boston System 30, as an important milestone.
Because that's what see that the criteria lasts longer. How it's executed lasts as long. Hopefully you're not reinventing the mission as frequently. I think reinventing what is a premier institution? These are the criteria, and this is how we execute it. And those have different timelines.
As we go through this and try to land at what's the long-term plan, are there any outside factors that we might need to consider as we're moving in that direction that might impact what a long-term plan will look like, that you can at least illustrate?
That's an interesting question. I think, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to answer the question with something specific, but the goal will be that this is a flexible, adaptable framework that is designed to be responsive to unforeseen conditions. So that's very conceptual, but I think that would be the way in which we future-proof this work. So that we're investing in staff. This plan would make a commitment to invest in staff development to enable prototyping and rapid feedback loops. To really be community centered, and then also to be responsive to unforeseen pricings like the pandemic, for example.
Or the book banning challenges that
Yes.
we're dealing with nationwide, or the arrival of artificial intelligence, machine learning in a impactful way. I mean, and other things that we don't know about.
Right, how we respond to emerging trends. Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah. I hope we be mindful of that because, use the word flexibility because in some cases we may need to accelerate certain things, in some cases we may need to slow.
I don't know why it started doing that.
AI.
Speaking of.
Now, and, speaking of AI, I mean, what our power grid's gonna look like in the very near future based on AI, draining all our power. So I'm just hoping that this group at least be cognizant always that there may be some outside factors that,
I know we could probably ask questions till 6:30, and we probably have a plan. Just two quick ones. One, where are we on the McKim renovation, which I just looked up because I didn't know about it. And then the second thing is just how you're including climate change in these assessments, because even this Back Bay is prime territory for that.
So I told this earlier, I said, keep asking the questions, because the questions that you're asking us are going to shape the methodology that we bring forward after today. So question about climate change, we don't know yet, but the fact that you've asked it, we will start to enter it into the methodology. So keep pulling those forward.
And Heidi, on the question with respect to the CAM, I think David has already made a good point. That's going to be critical. I think the timeline is still to be determined, right? We're waiting to hear what the city is going to allocate in terms of the next budget. And Nafeep Ball, who's on the board of trustees, is leading a committee looking at the McKim capital campaign. She's obviously not here today, but is going to be at a future meeting of this committee and will be speaking about what she's doing, because it's really essential that we coordinate and that the work that she's doing and her group is doing dovetails with the work of this group. David, you have others.
Yeah, the quick snapshot. So master planning was done in 2021. That produced a really transformational master plan for the building, which is about restoration and about reimagination and transformation. The price tag to do all of that all at once was pegged at $325 million. That was the scope of the project in 2021. Million.
Oh, that's.
Everybody in the chat?
So it goes.
321.
Oh, is that, I'm like,
Yeah, $321 million, $325 million. We would not do it all at once. We would phase it. That is now data that is 3 years old. So as accelerations and so on. Right now, we are working with the master plan folks to redo the costs and also look at modularizing and what is minimum requirements and Cadillac level requirements, so we can just understand the choices within that. We have had extensive conversations with the Boston Public Library Fund, Paul and the team, about how do we get ready for a true capital campaign on the private sector side. The model that we're starting with, however, is that funding from the city, funding from the state, funding from private philanthropy is the right model in varying degrees of commitment. Everybody, I think, agrees that knowing what the city's commitment will be first makes the other conversations easier or even possible. And I briefed the mayor and cabinet about a month ago on all of what I just said to you with supporting documents that the team has reviewed. Now Jeet has those. So the mayor will release her next proposed capital budget for the city of Boston, which is a 5-year plan, April 10th. Our desire and preference is that we will see a first major piece of commitment in that document, if it fits within the 5 years. If it's the 5th year, that's great. I'm happy with that. If it's the 6th year, it can't show up in the document because it's a 5-year plan. So we will know in April what that commitment, if they're ready to make a public commitment, or if there needs to be another, we need to wait another year or so. Earlier than that starts to become complicated because we need to ramp up to that scale of fundraising. So that's really a stay tuned, because that's the first, that date, that time period starts to unlock the rest. And climate change is, I think, going to show up in the alignment of our strategic plan with the mayor and the city's overall guiding principles, because that is one of the signature initiatives that we as a city are changing hands. We as a city are trying to address with the Green New Deal approach to buildings and various other ordinances, as well as protect against sea level change and other vulnerabilities.
Perfect. So just to do a brief time check, we're at about 10 to 5. We've got 3 exercises we'd love to walk through with you today. I think as items are coming up, we've also got post-it notes on the table. If you want to pin down certain ideas, we can pick up some of those at the end, but just want to make sure that we get to a few of the questions today.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, Erin, and we want to make sure that this team is getting the input that they need, so maybe we can keep moving and we can.
And like some of the other groups, we can also follow up with a question with an online survey to each of the participants to add some additional thoughts following today, if that works.
Yep.
Okay, that was my soft time check.
So I'm gonna move us as long as, I can talk about libraries all day long too. But one of the things that we have been charged to do as a vision and mission analysis audit, and Jose, to your point, one of the things that we've seen that is really important is that the values are strong and courageous in light of changing conditions, because even the mission can be pressure tested against those contexts. So I wanted to point that out. The vision is how we see the future. The mission is what we do to contribute to that future, and the values are the courage that we show up with every single day for ourselves, for each other and our communities. And then on the next slide, there are 2 case studies that I encourage you all to study. One is the recently adopted, as of Thursday, San Francisco Public Library Strategic Plan, and then next week, the Marin County Free Library Strategic Plan will be adopted. So I'll give that to you all once it's formally adopted. But to the question of what is the question that we really need to answer, it is unique in every community. And just like the reference question, it might not be the qualities that you all have articulated underneath that, and that's what we're trying to learn today. What is this work really needing to uncover for you all? And in San Francisco, what we learned is it's how might we bring value to a city that is about to go into a doom loop. So for 15 months, we engaged with staff and community in one of the most ambitious strategic plans with that feedback to really understand how to answer that question, which was not the charge we were given. So we learned that was the question after the first bunch of meetings.
Could you I could not hear what you said. What was the question?
So how might we bring value
To the
a city that is about to go into a doom loop?
A doom loop?
Yes. So the doom loop is that.
Did you say DOOM?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's as the city begins to degrade, residents, employers start to move out, which causes the city to degrade, which causes more to move out, is invariably city and urban doom.
So there was a real sense of fear and anxiety that was articulated in the first round of sessions that we did not see or hear in the original charge. So kind of the point being is we're starting to uncover with you all today what the question is. And in Marin County, the question was how might we bring value to the county that is entering into some really courageous anti-racist work. So it's unique with each place.
And that we will share the link, I think you said next week.
So, you want to kick us off there with our activity?
If I can get the slides going. So role and purpose, our first exercise, I'll come back to that slide in a minute. So we did this exercise with the leaders. Those of you who were part of that session, we have informed you sort of be a bit more of an observer versus an active participant in our breakout groups. But we will be giving we're going to put you in 4 groups, at one end of the table, one end of the table, corner and corner. We're going to give you a set of cards that have a number of prompts on what a library could be. We'll also give you a placemat that will sit on the table that has 3 categories. One is what is our ideal role and purpose? So of the cards, you'll review them one by one. What fits in with our definition of the Boston Public Library should be doing? Second category is stretch. What could we stretch into? And then the third category is a little bit more the exact wording is this does not align with who we should be. We have given you a number of pre-filled out cards. I'm just explaining what we're about to do to you, but we'll pass it out in a moment. So reviewing them sort of one by one, where should it fit in those categories? Our hope as strategic planning partners is we can take a look at how this group positions where the library should be and compare it with the same exercise that we did with leaders. So we can see where are the areas of alignment, where are we split, where should we head, again, to determine that primary question we should be. We will share the slides with some of the initial themes that we've heard as far as what we should be doing. Improving literacy of individuals, education and career building. Again, none of these are surprises. It's our earlier work, but we will share these slides so that you can see what is starting to bubble up. And also, I almost wonder if we don't show them what's been selected, but we'll send this out to you after. These were the rankings of the cards from the leaders, but understanding we'll be doing this exercise from your perspective. We'll share that out afterwards for interest as far as where the alignment was, but we won't give it away at this point. So if you'll bear with us for one moment, we're going to try to put a large piece of paper on this corner, that corner, and the 2 corners, so if we can clear some of the plates away.
But yeah,
And the only, David and Michael, the only 2 people who can.
So our only request, David, Michael, and Paula, is that all 3 of you do not end up in the same group.
Yes. And to give y'all some background, the library industry is really great at saying things like, we are reimagining the library and not defining what that means. So this is an exercise that is taking such stuff.
And we'll just be mindful if you go around the boards, be mindful of microphones are in the middle. Right, for the side, be mindful of wires in the microphone around the Station cards. So those want to come around to the inside of this. Be mindful of what microphones are on the stand. What's the groups of the tree? This is me.
There isn't a second one. Sorry.
that's all right.
Here she is.
There it is.
I thought we had 4 a minute ago. I don't know. Okay, whichever. Yes. There are 11 to 12 participants.
So let's do 3 groups. Yeah, 3 in each. Yeah.
3 in each, 3 in each.
Yeah. So 3 groups in there. Yeah.
And then once we get people back from grabbing a drill. My heart, but I.
Maybe I have a sweater in case one not all doors.
Museum.
Yeah. All right. We're all got four. I think
I've got four. Oh, are you including us?
No, you're including us.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. I'm like, once I. Maybe I can hear reader. You should. Yeah. Margaret, did we just merge into three groups?
Three groups of four.
Understood. Yeah. I'll probably repeat for the whole group. Yeah. Yeah, we're just doing three groups. Okay, so now that we've reshuffled, to recap, just to recap, you should have a large piece of paper on your table. Correct? Yes, nodding. You should have a set of cards in your hand. Please verify. Perfect. And you should have a facilitator buddy. I'm over here. Margaret is up at the front. Patricia and, okay,
I'll be
Margaret,
there.
you take the back. Maybe Holly, do you want to join Margaret? Perfect. So we will be here for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. If we finish early, we'll end early. Don't worry, we'll check. There's four of us. And what we would recommend, and your facilitator will help walk you through, is as a group, sort of read each card. If you have an initial instant, like this definitely is in the first category, what we should definitely do. Middle category is this might be a stretch, but we should consider it. And the third category is more, this is not where we want to be playing in your group's opinion. And then we will report out for the three and sort of hear where some of the debates were. Any questions before we get started?
I do want to say that the role and purpose definitions have come from the mayor's State of the City address. They come from some of the leadership language, the article, for example, as well as what other thought leaders in the industry are also thinking. So it's a combination of that.
And there is a blank card if there's something that your team thinks is very important to do as a write-in. Okay, I'll be joining you guys. That's all right with you? Yeah, either way works. Oh, I know what's on it.
All right, so you need to start reading. Yes. Let me read the part of this.
Or the juice.
Yes, because nobody wants to, but we'll share that here.
We hope the words tell. Each chart is different, as Margaret mentioned, some of them are tools and their priorities or other sources of the public library. Some of them are
Public library.
Yes, you've already done
The public library operates through a community that. Community that model is shaped by the local community it serves. Governance management and decision making on community input. The library can play a role by leveraging personal relationships with community. And facilitate.
I mean, I think that's.
Yeah.
What we do. It's not, you know, I mean, everybody's.
Yes.
And the headline was again?
Public library.
Public library operates through a community led model.
Cultural libraries.
It's something that it's like a role for us to play.
It serves as a center point for cultural activities, events, and identity. The library can play a role in shaping the cultural landscape and identity of the community, providing a sense of belonging and connection to its offerings. The asphalt.
It's almost more of a value. It's about to me, it's about the library. See ourselves, that's what we are.
Does it move over to them with that caveat?
I would argue too, yeah.
Yeah, it's not something we do.
Yeah, and you look.
I'm wondering if all of this.
Yeah, that makes me feel like having to pass the modified, but.
Generation. I think the generation.
I'll try one here, and the public libraries in general. Economic justice, the concept of economy will be more successful. That's what it is.
Deep with those of us.
Library can play a role in creating opportunity. Sex race, read natural.
I think we're doing that. I think.
Is there a community? How would it be? This is more, it's our ideal. So in the overall study.
It doesn't mean it has to go into the stretch category. So. Yeah. The caveats, I think more towards.
I'm really comfortable with being in there. You think it's
There's a meaning associated.
I think that could be a mechanism, right?
These are supposed to be aspirational.
No, these are even now.
That's right.
I feel we're on purpose. Like it's opportunity.
Yeah, I would say.
I'm gonna keep bringing mine.
I would say that was.
Primary fosters and inclusive democracy.
Leverage on, we say we would.
Yeah, guess it's.
Direction.
Oh, I understand.
I think we're doing some really.
Yeah, I'll let anything in there.
That's very kind of what I. Yeah. I don't think everybody's not here.
But it's.
Engagement.
It's an ignorant tool, but it's sort of.
Offering literacy and education.
That's actually gonna put it right in.
Library provides essential resources. Well,
So we're doing all of them.
life, some ways.
Right.
Health. Or being one, life.
No, see the last one. Okay, I this I'm gonna get ready for.
You'll be blessed.
Okay, yeah. Something we're already, that we use for purpose.
That's something. Yes, I mean, there's.
Yeah, that'd be a lot.
Gonna be a little bit different, I think it's more of a stretch.
You can put it in the middle.
Yes.
I didn't, I think just.
Yes.
So.
I
The things address.
Because we need to debate before we.
Let's go, let's go other parts.
Yeah.
Even more.
I think that might.
And by the way, when we did the public.
No, I think I mean, there are parts of that, but I don't, I mean, that's a pretty. You just read.
Collaborative impact. Brings together diverse stakeholders.
Your destination.
Consider decoupling of individuals, address complex social issues, collaborate, integration of the nation, provide resources, separate metrics, experiences, connect diverse networks, thereby creating a robust ecosystem.
And to me, that's why I. Access. There, but that's one of the.
Collaboration among community perspectives.
Put on this side of the box.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I would put it here only because part of the strategic plan is to hear what the other partners, at the city level and other institutions. Where there's where they might see us from a strategy. Sure. That's more.
Larry can play a role there.
So it means.
Because I see the house the way it shines, right? And so what's so we're not gonna buy the house. Go there and one slide. And one sort of so we have three projects right now. Play it all out.
So it's not.
Yes.
I am very.
Reject imagination.
I have a hard time.
So it's no longer just a standalone.
I'm not.
Library that includes, so anyway, into that.
I'll tell you all that.
Yes, that's what I think.
Probably like, but.
I think transportation is more interesting. However, we're doing this browse borrow board program where you can meet anybody on bus. Some of the bike programs will probably be.
So the primary to do that, but I think why was it personal? It's good.
It's like, we can often work with one. Our own.
Partners.
Library of things.
What libraries are generating, justice, the concept that. Do you have more successful?
I'm saying if I gave us.
Yeah.
So we can like move a little bit down.
For examples of instantiate this. Because it says A generator.
It's like a lot of this the state. And provide some services. I don't know those services. I think it's probably my,
I think why we're.
He's like, it's something that certainly the library can participate in.
It's some improvement and acknowledge it's different than the goals of Taylor programming.
Without the prioritization exercise that will must needs follow, it definitely won't be there.
The pilot, it's positive.
Yeah, okay, it's a generator of.
A stickler.
The first talent.
To your lawyer.
Visual potential, access to resources. Because there's training classes now.
Yes, I actually think that.
Every day. Everybody's fun with, again, it works, right? See if it works.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not there, it's not definitely all the way there.
And the library notes the.
The public library provides some ways to impact health, well-being, quality of life, by providing resources and connections, safe housing, transportation, and
Career experience.
raise system discrimination and violence,
Financial
resources and
stable
connections,
careers for all.
education, and job opportunity.
I think that's what that is.
In general, we end up more on having.
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of very much experience. I'm not gonna do that.
And that's a good way.
Potential through access to resources, education, and career experiences.
Cultural anchor, serves as a central point in social activities, events, and identity. The library.
And it's a large employer.
Yeah.
Access, providing.
I think it's also.
Giving.
Library employees, the library.
This will make color, my commentary about some of the others.
Public library fosters.
Public library provides essential resources to the health, inclusion.
Ensures participation.
Anti-racism.
Fostering underrepresentation, marginalized and political.
To me, then the headline is misleading because the public library is a conduit for community talent pipelines. I was looking at more as access and they comes to us, we give them resource connections, et cetera, that then leads them to give the compensation they need, that therefore again will provide a job, which will provide stability. That's my thoughts. Yeah.
This to me feels like the 21st century is very.
You gotta choose one, but I don't know the two of these things. You gotta choose.
I'm sure the public library fosters democracy.
But
that's not a judgment, but
That's what.
One that ensures participation. However, play a role. Engagement, decision making, public decision making processes.
I think it's a stretch. Or the primary. So we do provide some resources. So I I mean, there's a lot of. It's the public library. We've got. So like, I think the biggest thing we have social. So we do provide some social. Yeah, we do provide some social.
Based on information, production, resource, and freedom.
Is
science, magic, forming arts, television, radio, more.
So it's subject, it's or something.
It also.
Might have some.
I'm trying to think of the right metaphor. It's if you're an artist and you seek out the library because you want inspiration or knowledge about a past life.
Okay.
The taste is, or I would have.
Well, I mean.
From that one. The library.
So for me, it is. This is an example
I
of.
don't feel like.
So provides resources. Like, it's not delivers resources. Oh, really, I'm a social worker. Just like, you know, they're.
So the library play will reading opportunities.
Those are.
School adult.
Like, if you wanna learn about issues, issues of violence, but I'm not learning. But the library has a law, if you wanna, you know, probably not that thing, so.
Yeah, that's.
So, I feel like there's, where the line is between. And I'm gonna make all the calls and I'm gonna drive you. I think for right.
Public library.
I feel like
Library.
that's in line with service.
Right, the state.
Yeah, so I would say.
Thanks. My God, I don't want to read anymore.
I feel like this is a lot of stuff right here.
It's a collaborative.
I think it's something saying that's something we should all. We don't necessarily.
to address like social issues.
To make
The library, flavor of like the so. So I remember.
One of the things that were saying.
Because now we can discuss this, the ones that we, yes, what we have examples, because you have a lot of. This meeting.
Public library.
And also then I would just say, oh yeah, now we have. We have the resources and the pieces that will not be selected on.
Well, that's today.
Do everything. Yes. Yeah, I think so. So we have to see.
Exactly, he's so angry. Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's good. That's it. I mean, I will say about. Yes. So you got to. We need to make your own. I will return. Yeah. I just need to. Our foundation would be a stretch. Mission is something that came today, but the question I ask my team all the time is, all right, economic justice is dependent on disruption of markets and capital. Here, how you heard.
Innovation, less than 10, 15 years. Like, that's.
Well, the benefit. Right. But. Ask the same question live. I mean, honestly, it's by 1% of the fund, it's for the library to do just that. I'm not saying it's still somewhat over here. It's right.
Because we won't even have just.
And, you know. No, we have to. Yeah. Well, that's not part of saying that's too.
That's something. Later in the process. Public library, 60 of the English issue. I think there's gonna be one or two things in our middle boxes that could show up there as being, yeah, we're not gonna do this alone.
That's why I.
Yeah.
So I think for right now, it's here, but when we combine it with the top 3 partners that we choose, then maybe it's.
Creativity, collaboration.
Right.
We have nothing that was in the very much. It's not the public library, borrow, special elections, on this part, that's only the ongoing, are going to be self-implemented.
That's quite an outrageous skill. Innovation, entrepreneurship, and ethical learning.
Sorry, I would say.
But I just say, I recommend it's somebody far and
This group disagrees with, should not be part of it. I just, that's.
I don't think it's like school. Yeah, this seems like school. I would not.
Right, you have really good.
Yeah, sorry, right, that's your question. Things
I don't agree, but maybe it's also. Digital information literacy. That whole issue.
They, otherwise, that's a motion, telling us that library, you play a role, like, Hillary.
You are the so I can't stop, was 126 now. But my kids, they got this stuff, they did not get it at. If the schools can't do it, 6, 7 years.
Here's part of what I'll say about school though, school is still designed more for content and knowledge that is, application.
Okay.
Sure.
But where?
This area is honestly. The number of people who are presenting with these themes are effectively very good, including our social workers.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, all these things that you hear about where, you know, someone is identified as seeing a document for by, you know, school.
I saw this is. The way I was interpreting most of some of this is not. It's not how you feel, it's your ability to, you know, self-reflective, maybe listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where we are.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought we were doing
Yeah.
this, right?
I think that's good. Trying it.
So now we're on our third partner. And maybe the amazing. So they do see that.
That's a reality, that's really.
I mean, I've always been involved, you know, when you said smart and special collections, it's especially like trusting as a way to sergeant, you know, the basic housing, I'm talking all the state, such as branch, like every other, it's like a whole that's a lot of,
You know, what do you do?
Yes.
you know, some of it's emerging, such as for, and where, and it's, but, and what really knows is, you know, it's those are not issues that have been coming up most, of course, service. So, some of them.
Maybe they'll show up.
There's still stuff that's not
Yeah.
fully, I think we're actually. In how. Because some of those deliberators, some of the staff were just not engaged with us.
Because I think certainly by the time we get to implementation in September, the resource needs are successful around all of the systems. Yes.
Here's the problem, it's not like they're teaching.
One of my favorite smart ideas, but think about around songs on the
Yeah, it's close to the board, collaboration with someone. Also, you know, sort of exciting, where it has finance, or there's water.
Yes. We're not. Stop us working.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a related,
We're really good at doing the good, but we're not.
So when I get up.
Yeah, and I'm in away.
It's not.
Or how.
Yes. But how agree with that? So.
For how many
Summer.
And everyone's.
We're not doing
That collaboration that we have a collective.
yeah,
Personally, with everything, I can see what the last one. So I think my brain takes you to get to that side of that. So every time you, and when the farmers market is going on in Cowley Square, it's, you know,
Removing barriers. This is about removing our mayors.
Then, that's something that I don't know, I used to go to those meetings, for example, I don't know anything about what's going on with McKim. It is.
And they have to be ready.
I got
Yes. The point throughout the two.
I'm looking back at it.
What's for happening?
To me,
But I know basic property and run lines. So.
I'm saying today we're not doing as well.
You
should be collapsing basic so that we're in sync with theirs. So.
I think it's having it's easier, essentially, it's easier, enriching, sniffing.
Here again, I'm thinking of the future, I'm not thinking of
Yeah, that's right.
I think we have right here. I think we want to put this there. This is the one. I think it's You're already doing a lot of this stuff. You want it here? So you want it there, you want it there, you want it. Access. Okay, so literacy, we got. I think everyone wants literacy, but but. Already out of time, so I can't say, I think it's like 3 minutes, right? Okay. Personal.
Art education.
They requested 5, we're landing on 3.
Yep.
No.
Skills education.
So.
What we were saying. Manage what. Learn their grade, but then it's not necessarily libraries.
I mean, I'm thinking that maybe closer to the.
Exactly. Does that make sense?
For this kind of. Public library, equitable access to enriching opportunities, allowing to know the best.
I think the question is
That's not our sweet spot.
today.
I mean, literally, the whole thing.
No, interestingly enough, I'll say it's like my break also in the leadership, so.
I'm just taking it.
But I will say
The
that.
nurturing the creative economy. You had a question about that before. You learned.
You know, the unique.
Be in that business because I think so I lean towards that, but I will compromise. All these years.
Essential service resources for you. That's really good. Not so much. And then, democracy. Fostering opportunities for marginalized. That's also significant. Some of them,
I'll put it sweet.
We're really good stuff. The sense of.
libraries, but you can't actually go in the library.
Yeah. Have that.
I mean, if you can't, if anything.
Yeah, so on that.
I think that is. And the libraries.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not that libraries.
The big firms.
But that's-
It's still, we still have a lot of.
No, I think it's.
The community-led model like that, yeah.
I'm talking about, I mean.
I think, I don't see that.
I don't know how. I mean, I mean, I see some, first of all, we have. It's very much, I mean, the suburbs, the like, the systems, like, we don't, all of the surrounding.
It's really, like you said, it's only through our conversations, the people on the branches, that's not really a very.
What elder care services where you have.
Have it in community land. I was sure these.
Members experience that they.
It's not something we don't want to do.
Not that it doesn't align with our mission. It's just,
Well, only because I think that
Yeah, a guy who was retired from
generate a lead.
his dry cleaning business for 50 years. I was willing to. That's a lot story.
Can we see the talent pipeline?
because
That to me would be.
Mr. Lawrence, you clear all
And it's.
seeing
It's requires very little research. That's our whole research.
So-
Based on what we're talking about this one, I'm like, well, you guys already know.
It's the memory.
You could have more. It's not a. I mean, there's that part of who we are.
Could be.
Function that we need to be concentrated. And we need to be
People.
strong. Make us strong. Unity. Part of that. Engagement, that will make life fun.
Wait, and this, and ties in that, I'll soon you, I think it's next to this, if you believe that, then. So if they can do that, then they should. And collective impact,
We do this work.
I think that ties to the community.
We're not certainly thinking about.
So collective impact is like a collaborative approach that brings together our stakeholders. Social issues and chiefs.
Is that community doing this risk?
I think it's a lot of collaborative.
That's part of the community. I mean, I think it's much more specific.
Maybe there's only one issue, maybe, but I don't think that's.
Social media.
And we want to be.
Management.
We don't.
Or provide a table.
We do.
I just, ask was that one. This is the role and purpose. Maybe this is not. Yeah, you're right. I think
I think answering the question about, like, there's a lot of organizations that do this, why should the library?
That's what we had. Because they have.
And then next time we go into those other places.
And that goes back to some of the things that I said. The library is doing.
Why are you doing?
There's so much, why are you doing something that are nutritional things?
Who are using a lot.
Housing, things like that.
Some of them we can.
We have a small principle for every language. So some are much better than the others.
Friends of this, friends of that.
Yeah.
And here.
You know, they have multiple issues. They have like, they don't know technology, they don't speak English very well. So we can actually help with all of those things. So it.
Well, there may be one of the things that also. That's why we. This.
I know, you know, we don't want to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that come?
And so you track them, this is source of.
Right, I think make sure. This kind of. Yeah, so that, you want to, it goes like one big box.
Bottom line, Charles will take it. Well, library motivates innovation, entrepreneurship, inclusive, equitable learning for 21st
We
century.
have many of them.
Yeah, public library promotes equitable access.
It's very hard.
Everyone to enjoy the best.
Always something I say. You have two more? So you're having, you have two more? I'm gonna two more.
David, that's on there. It's 'cause David.
Yeah.
It's 'cause David. David complicated. That's.
They roll out lots of big video based on it.
Yes.
Well.
I think we were covering last week, but it's fine.
Are these the same, but? They use- they are. Okay.
I love the way it's built architecturally, I think it's stunning.
So we're gonna do shade.
The one way street that goes, you probably wrote down.
Library books, please.
It's not there. I'm right near the mark.
Yeah, why is he regular student? What's the guest on?
How many?
I'm gonna say.
Official communications.
In Boston, friends, I was like, oh, no, I've been there 17 years. That's all I thought. People here, like, you know, I've been out.
I know, you're right, you're right. Right.
But it's the longest I've lived anyway. Around something, so. Yeah.
You are. Yeah.
Right next to the.
Their first meeting really enriched.
Being a partner.
Yeah.
I used to watch all of us, Chandler. So. Yeah.
One else.
We were on the 50th. I know.
What's that, like 30 year, like low artist, low or something? Gym pool, we don't need, we have a smaller
I've
gallery.
been feeling it, my social media.
We were in a post.
Feel young.
Yeah.
I would love
And then JP. But we went to buy. Got it.
We've been almost the same. I think because I just and then I wanted to put a picture of this and I had to walk to my job. Oh, God, my husband, so we got married, I was pregnant, I was like.
Yes, so.
It's about difference. Not by.
Are you around here? Justin. And you're in this part of
What do you think, Margaret?
A nice day. Walking a good time and then.
We're gonna go straight. Okay, because that's the most important. Okay.
I know.
And then, and just the two.
I apologize.
Yeah, I think that's all right. And if we land on that, we're gonna have to wear. I'll try to give the call. But I've removed all of the, yeah, I've removed all of the report outs from the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
First,
I love it.
I used to be. How did you do? Second round, how did you do? I was still thinking.
Yeah, very powerful. I got when I was in the summer. I could do that, but yeah, like swimming, you take like 15 minutes just to get myself together. And so I was like, I feel like I was I'm really bad. I was getting the I got a trio. It's like I'm a beta mess. And whatever I choose, you know, choose. Okay. Well, we don't set up
We've adapted here.
Sounds like we came homework.
So are we gonna do that? Yeah, if you stay where you're currently at, that would be great. I know Jose had to step out and welcome back.
Sorry.
Perfect. So we're going to do, and we are back. So we're going to do a brief share out. We'll stop by the 3 tables. Not necessarily where you placed all 11 of your cards, but maybe some of the things that bubbled up or the discussion or some of the strategies that you brought in. Our team will be scanning and analyzing all of these notes with the facilitators, but if we can just do a little bit of a round robin, how did that go? Any initial thoughts? Can I put my team in? Okay, no, never mind.
It's ready.
Yeah, all good.
Just highlights, quick.
Just highlights.
I'll talk about the things we've debated the most. Which were kind of the role of libraries in cultivating innovation, entrepreneurship, and inclusive sustainable learning versus schools. A lot of debate about that, ended up in the middle. And then the role of the library in nurturing the creative economy. Something else that we talked about, and then the role of the library in providing essential resources. Kind of where's the line in terms of that kind of stuff.
I think 2 points just to add to that. One was also the concept, I'm gonna misquote it. The myth of multi-service, if we're providing everything, are we doing anything well? And then also the write-in card was where is literacy and supporting learning and reading on this map? So that was our write-in as well. Anything else?
The flow chart, I think that's
Yeah,
interesting.
We did connect some of them. And
Yeah.
said, but you have to do this in order to do this, in order to do that. We have a nice little flow chart.
Love that.
And a gentle gradient between must-have.
Yes.
And that can translate into prioritization.
Yeah.
Too. That's great.
Perfect, thank you, guys.
Yeah, sure.
So logical.
I was gonna be tested on my upside down reading. Thank you. So I won't really comment on the dark green cards. I thought some of our new ideas were probably more interesting. We thought that the idea of the library is a inspirational space that is safe and comfortable and inviting was important. And we talked about how the special collections, the treasure of the library, could be a way of bringing people in and giving them a sense of inspiration. So we wanted to capture that. We thought that there were a bunch of things that the library could do to stretch potentially that would be interesting. We talked about making use of making better use of the physical spaces that dovetails within the Kim plan. It seemed to us like there were lots of empty spaces or underutilized spaces in the library. Related, we thought that the library should be thinking ambitiously about the broader, that the central library should be thinking ambitiously about the broader Copland Square area and the Copland Square renovations, the plaza. We'd love to see a more exciting urban space that the library could be an anchor of. We talked about pushing the library out to the city, sending out teasers, sending out communications in a way that was enticing. We talked about potentially having a strategy of having poetry on the T or excerpts from texts that relate to the city. There are probably all sorts of ways that we could think about that. We also spoke about the GBH podcast center and the way that is such a great resource and how it might be more utilized to create more of a sense of energy and bring more people into the library, and get more excitement about the library. And then we talked about the importance of a communication strategy that was simple and concise, and thinking about not getting bogged down in voluminous programming. Are there other things you wanted to add, Paul or Jonathan? I'm not sure it's great. Over.
No.
I know, yes.
Those are great, those are great ideas.
Just deal with the cards.
You did a great job, you focused on tactics, a lot of really interesting, we were in a different place.
It all.
Right?
The murky middle?
Yeah.
Murky or?
Messy middle.
Messy middle.
Yeah.
Messy middle, we'd love to hear more about from the table in the corner.
Okay, yeah, I'll go. So I think our group had tension, good tension around kind of the notion that every single thing that was on these cards, we agreed somebody needs to solve, somebody needs to address, especially in the world we're living in today. The tension we had was whether or not it was the right role for the lot, which I suspect this tension is gonna keep going on in this process, is whether some of these ambitions and thoughts about it's something the library should be doing. And we spent a lot of time trying to think about that, and I don't think we really resolved it. We resolved it for some of these points and not others.
And I think the success of this group was coming out with more questions than answers.
Yes, yeah.
Which we will put forth.
And we added caveats to every single
Everything,
one of the great
yes.
things. It's like, this would be great if, or limited to,
Yes.
but we were in danger of having every single green card in the CAM section.
That was a fearless.
Yes.
Okay.
Even though we can't,
Right.
but in some ways, so we'll have to figure that out, right?
But the exercise is modeling our reality in that regard.
Right, exactly.
What you said about yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then the question then becomes, do you take some cards out or do you cut some cards up? And leave parts of cards in and take other parts of that same card out, but it's not about the whole binary of like, is this card in or out, right? I think that's all where a lot of the caveats I imagine is started getting into, right?
If you said, which I think is so smart, is the challenge is what are we saying, what are we gonna say no to?
And how do we have the confidence?
Right, and feel okay about that.
And it's hard to say no, because as I was talking to my group, the reason why libraries and the Boston Public Library in particular are doing some of the work that some people might say, is this really the work of the library or is this the work of another organization? Is because many of the people and communities that need those services are here and they don't want to go, so like they don't necessarily trust another organization. So, and many of the people have multiple needs, like they might need to learn to use a computer, learn to speak English, but also need to find a job and also need social work help. And where can they go to get all of that?
That's
the library.
And who do they trust?
Partnerships could really come in
Yes,
and
yes.
enhance those sort of in-house partnerships. Because then you're creating adjunct roles that aren't necessarily part of your budget, David,
And it also gets us out of that, what do we say no to, as an institution, a trusted institution, contributed to our community, what is it that people want us to do? What do they, we're the only place that can do that. What is our unique contribution to our community? And not everybody can do what we do. So instead of saying, what can we say no to? I think if we could really focus on what is it that's truly unique about the library and the grant system in the city. There's nothing else like it.
It isn't though, in some ways, I think the strongest argument is the one Michael just articulated, which is honestly, we have a duty to go where people with needs
Yes,
are.
yes.
And if the library, especially in the branches, is that place.
And I would say right now, in this moment in time, it is certainly that place for many communities.
Yes.
Not all, not everyone, but like for many communities, the communities that we see coming in and our numbers are up, but the communities we see coming in.
Right. He needs to be in charge of everything.
I mean, but
I am all about library and power building.
I just wanna say, I'm saying the same thing, but I just wanna tweak the language just a little bit, because it isn't about saying no. It's what you said, it's, you know, the library has always been, give us your poor, give us your this, give us your that, whatever. And it changes, it's changed in terms of delivery of services and programmings over time. And we didn't turn anybody away. The library has not turned anybody away. If we look at the vast amount of programming that we do, that's a tactical issue to be, and those are some of the things that we could say no to. But the key function and purpose of the library, to me, is the same. And you can see that, go ahead.
Well, and I think maybe a harder line to kind of think about is, are you ultimately the solve or are you the salve? Because if you're just kind of making it feel better for a while, it may be better. That's good. That's good. Folks need that. But I think ultimately you want to try to be the solve. And a lot of folks in multi-service work will tell you that, yep, I thought I did the right thing, and 20 years later, child walked in. The grandchild walked in with the same challenges. And so we weren't cycle disruptors, but we still did good in the moment. Do you want to be cycle disruptors, or do you want to kind of be managers of the challenge? And, it's a hard decision to make because it's hard to say no.
And also, I feel like we talked a little bit about just where's the line? Like, the library has so many resources. Like, when do you go beyond, okay, you can call this number to, let me drive you there, let me make sure you get it through, because the needs are so vast.
And it's what David was saying, it's about prioritization. Because, yes, we added the line of literacy and fostering the love of reading. That's never gonna go away from libraries. Is that something we need to prioritize? Maybe, maybe not. That's part of the foundation of libraries. So we're not gonna throw that out, but that might just keep going. And there might be other things to prioritize.
When we were talking, it was similar, and I keep coming back to it's not quite the right metaphor with the chicken or the egg. I mean, when you're talking about fostering the creative community, if there's somebody who wants to learn how to, make, I don't know.
Weave.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. They know they can come here and they can find out how to weave. That's already here. So the question of whether this is a repository or an action-based thing where, now we are offering classes in weaving as opposed to just providing the information on or resources on how to find out how to weave. And a lot of the stuff, I mean, it was kind of a lot of these. I felt like that is something that the library can fulfill for people when they come here. But that's not something the library needs to necessarily expand upon in terms of its mission or programming.
Erin is, Margaret and Patricia, I just want to be mindful of the time and make sure you're doing what you need from us. Is this helpful? Are there other things that you want to?
We have one very critical question that we do want to discuss today. We've jumped slightly ahead in our agenda. When I promise a post survey, it's a couple of the questions that we missed in the middle. So I will be sending out kind of please fill out this form here, open answer to the two questions we just skipped. But the one piece that we thought was critical to talk about in person with you today is sort of the idea of community partners to support the strategic planning efforts. I would say if you're sitting in the middle, this will be a little easier on the outside ring. But we wanted to talk through sort of where is our position related to community partners, and then use this brain trust, this group that we have in the room, to start identifying other groups that we're connected to. And I think you want to add some framing to that, but I'll be handing out some placemats. We'll frame up the exercise, but that is the one we wanted to make sure we had time for today. And then I will follow up with a survey, question or two that we missed in the middle.
So two things, tying the bow on this previous conversation, which is, is why we do this work, to hear your great insights. Priscilla, what I'm hearing from you challenging us to do is really build a culture of yes, to lead with this work so that there's a clarity of what we do and why we do it, so that we're not leading with a culture of no. But I think that's really insightful. And then are we a solve or a salve? And about the, do we do leaving classes? What's the intentionality behind everything that we do? And what courage are we going to take to really break cycles of poverty, to really create systems change? I think is also a huge opportunity here. So you all have noticed from me, I have opinions, but I don't always express them. One of my colleagues says, oh, that's the perfect Margaret non-answer. Y'all have seen me do that today to really elicit from you all. But I have formed some opinions about what I think the definition of the library is, so that I can also shape our thought leader thinking. And the first one is that the public library isn't necessarily a place, but it is a philosophy, that it is a malleable instrument for change that we as an American democracy have created as a privilege for that rapid iteration. And when I looked up the definition of instrument for change, it is someone who intentionally shares their resources to pursue an aim to make a change in an area they are passionate about transforming. And what I love about this definition is if you've ever met a librarian or a library worker, they are passionate about the community. And also what I loved about this is that resources, it doesn't say books, it doesn't say collections, it doesn't say technology, it says resources. So I think that's an interesting insight. And then I have a bias that the public library is and can be a community economic development engine, and can really inform equitable, just development in a city to build social infrastructure. So those are two definitions that I carry with me in this work. And in both those contexts, we can't do this work alone. And so really like shaping that question, where do we sit in collective impact work, is really where we're starting with this next exercise. You all have networks throughout the city that we should probably engage with in this work. We will be engaging with community stakeholders. We are not sure exactly the format yet, but by this brainstorming exercise, we're developing a partner mapping. It's almost the beginning of a really strong community asset map as well, for us to start to think about who and what organizations we should engage with during the strategic planning process. And they're framed around arts and culture, education and learning, civic engagement, human services, youth services and engagement, and workforce development, which align with the city's mandate to the library. So
it's based upon where we see ourselves sitting from a sector analysis point of view, and also to the service priority.
Though you will notice the worksheets also have a blank, we're missing a critical category.
Can you say more about what engagement means? Like, is this invite them to focus groups or survey?
All of the above. And I think as we start to see who you all have started to identify that should be engaged, we'll be able to form what type of engagement is going to work best. In our work in strategic planning, we've done community breakfasts where folks come together and you start to see gaps and alignments and opportunities. We've done community surveys just for community-based organizations to get insights into what they see as opportunities in the strategic work. We've done focus groups, we've done one-on-one conversations.
Right now, we're looking at the who, so we can determine the how.
And so should we put the heads of these organizations or organizations, and it could include their clients?
Yes, both. It's all,
How you do
it's
that.
all. Yes,
Yeah.
you'll get me soon.
It seems to me that, one of the things that with the Compass Plan, when they engaged the community, it was really kind of a hodgepodge of people showing up. Without relationships, so just like people got invited to have, what do you want the library to do? Not in every case, but in some cases. And I'm just wondering, I don't even know that, I'm just throwing this out, I don't even know that it makes sense to deal with people who are already in relationships and who are already, who either are key players in the city, maybe that's not right. I don't want to say key players because that's not accurate, but people, when we have them in a room, they can actually think about their relationship to the library and have a conversation because they know each other. Versus they're sitting in a room and you're asking them questions and,
It's much more intentional, I think, in this framing than it was back at, I mean,
the
let's
focus
remember.
group, I used to run focus groups and so.
I agree, but I just think there's always the danger that you're not including every voice. If you don't open to everyone. So that's my own concern when you curate too much.
But then you're saying no to somebody.
And then engage.
But what does, by having everybody involved, would we just say, okay, anybody who cares about the library?
No, I'm not saying we necessarily should,
Right.
say, open the door to say anyone who wants to, but I just worry that if you're, like, I look around this table and I don't think we're representing all of Boston.
No.
And so I want to make sure we serve so many underserved communities. I want to make sure we're intentional about reaching.
Can I give a couple of examples that might illustrate where I think this is supposed to go? And it sounds like we might be doing this exercise as a full group rather than separately, but.
If you have any thoughts, feel free to jot them down, but I'm also taking notes on the side. I'd also say, Michael, to your comment, what is the engagement that we need to make our plan for the future versus who do we engage as we start to implement and roll it out? I think right now we're trying to focus on who could inform the overall planning. And to your point, if there's holes or groups that this is where we're starting to crowdsource. But to the worry of not hitting everyone, there is something to be said of determining the direction and then using that much wider engagement to determine the how and what that looks at every branch and every community as the sort of rollout of these mission value and goals, if that makes sense.
Answer though, I too read, community feedback groups and stuff. We're gonna have to do a few different things.
Yes.
We're gonna identify and kind of invite certain critical organizations to the table in a couple different ways. I do think it's more important for whether it's you all individually. There are some people that are not gonna want to sit in a focus group and express opinions out loud. That feedback is critical as well. And then it seems to me there needs to be also one or two basically meetings where you're just, whatever we take from this, you invite the public because the process needs to have credibility.
And I think the work you're doing with the staff and training them on how to have those one-on-one conversations with people is also a good way to get it.
One of the data points. Just for awareness. For that comment, in the staff workshop, part of that work was training them to go out to their branches and interview members of the community about the service as one data point to collect. I agree, this will be multiples, but just in case anyone wasn't familiar with that piece. Sorry.
So I was gonna, in the category of human services and civic engagement, gonna give the example of Pine Street Inn that we work with pretty closely. I think early in the process, active partner organizations that are very close to us will have a perspective on our values and our relevance to their work, as well as input for later on in terms of services work that stays on our strategic plan. And then in the blank box, I think we should formally park our friends groups across the system because they haven't landed in a spot yet, and yet some of them are very challenging, But regardless whether they're challenging or incredibly functional, they're still an important part of our community.
I guess to this piece, credibility.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I mean, I think the city is an obvious stakeholder that we need to communicate with. In fact, we need to figure out what strategy we're doing on it. I think for McKen, this dovetails with the work that Paul is doing and Navdeep is doing, but identifying people in the nonprofit community who might be excited about being involved in that and might like to talk about the strategy as it entails making better use of physical spaces, bringing the treasures to the people more broadly. One process question I had, Erin, is so I take the point that we need to think through who the partners are, but is the idea that we would come up with a sort of sense of where we might be headed and then we test with them, or is the sense that they would go through this exercise? Like what are you envisioning the process being for engaging these stakeholders? Or more specifically, what is the timing? At what point, how much work do we need to have done before we go to these other?
Yeah, I'm gonna volley that to the left.
So typically in strategic work, we go to the stakeholders about a third of the way through. Because you're starting to formulate some, how might we questions of, to Cheryl's point, you know, what are the questions we really want to answer? We have qualities of what the strategy wants to be. And we as a library are forming some questions that we need your help answering. And that's a really good place to go. So we're still using those relationships in a information gathering stage. Where we have seen the most success at that point is when we really frame it around, let's introduce you to what the library is and can be. So it's a re-energizing, it's a reinvigoration, it's a re-education opportunity for y'all as leaders. This is what our consultant team is bringing to us and challenging us with. So that's an imagine the possibilities. And then it's a session around what are the gaps and opportunities around your mission, our mission, so that we can start to build a strengthened relationship, partner relationship going forward. So that typically is the framework that we work in with the community stakeholder groups at the beginning. It's peeling back the onion, to Michael's point. We want to, and to David's point, you know, we want to use the relationships that we have, the trusted relationships that we have, to learn about ourselves better and differently. Get to communities that we can't get to yet because we might not have those trusted relationships, but our partners do. And then keep peeling back the onion to get to those community groups. As the plan launches is usually when that starts to take shape.
We can give you a list of 100 community partners that we work with, 100 more that we don't work with, but either should or would like to. And yet that feels like that needs to go through a prioritization exercise in terms of activity.
And we love it. So give it to us all.
Like GBH,
Yeah.
you're right there in
Yeah.
our front door.
Yeah.
And our partner, and yet day to day, the relationship I would call actually much more transactional than it appears to the outside world.
Yeah.
And so, okay,
Yeah.
I think clearly that they fit at least in the education and learning space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe to expound on what David said, two things, is getting clear about the questions for each of these stakeholder groups. Because I have different questions for human service groups than I do for cultural groups and individual artists. It's a whole different inquiry. But there's also a set of questions about the partnership technology. I'll use that phrase, kind of, how do you optimize the relationship? And that's probably actually a set of questions that you ask people that you're already in direct relationship with, which may be more one-on-one than it is group work.
I really want to emphasize, and Christian, and I'm sure Paul made as well. I think engaging the donor community is critical here, because no matter what we do, knowing the financial situation and the city's financial situation, this plan has a better opportunity to be successful if there's ultimately funding for it. And that would be private sector, corporate funding. So I hate to be so, you know, whatever, but I.
Tactical.
One question there, I mean, I was gonna, because I think that the private for-profit community, sort of is where you're going with the donor piece, but actually my question was, I don't know where it fits. I mean, there's a version of private sector for-profit that's not just philanthropic, right? That engages with you to serve their ends, programmatic, and I wasn't quite sure where to fit that in here. One might say, I might answer my question by saying, well, there's private for-profit groups that are supported, there's private for-profit groups in education market. Maybe, yes, but that's a smaller group. Where would you put, say, private tech, like Google and Amazon, who might have their own needs and they want to partner with us? So that's actually an open question. Do you have another box there, or do you have a place for them?
In the blank box.
Right, no, right, so that box there, I see up there, so.
I was in the blank box when you.
We can have many blank boxes.
I wanna throw out something different than what Ron is saying, which is that going to a variety of stakeholders, of interested parties with a similar set of questions, I think opens things up. Like, you might think, oh, well, let me go to the housing organization, ask them about kind of unhousing needs, but there might, if you have a broader question, you might get a broader set of answers that avoids kind of those silos. Even, maybe there's some follow-up questions that are connect particularly to that kind of activity, and I imagine this is already on the list, but users, like people who are using the library of all ages, I hope that's on the radar. Like, I would love to hear what my kids have to say about the library, because, we saw the change, the transformation in JP, and they fell in love with it. They used to go to Connelly and they're like, this is amazing. And so I think we might be surprised by keeping the question more broad about this is what's happening now. These are some of the things that go, what do you think BPS, that relationship would look like, or what could look like?
What's interesting about the way that broader question, we're always thinking, what is the catalyst question for change that we're introducing to the processes? And that could be that piece that is that larger, how might be. And I'm just answering a question here that this work will generate more in a sophisticated way, but how might we use the library to advance your goals? That could be the broader question. Might the library be this instrument?
And solve problems.
And solve,
not be a south. Solve.
Change for the city.
Is the evolving patrons, is there a strategy to do surveys to our card holders and things like that? Like with a question or?
It could be.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Very plus collapse.
Yeah.
But you're talking about users.
Yeah.
There's an education piece, we're talking about, people have an impression of currently what the library is. And my understanding is that this process would help people begin to think about the library, what it could be, not just in terms of filling gaps, but such and such. I hope that we have a way of doing that. So if you say, I know when I do a survey, you say, what would you like to see more of, less of, whatever? People are only doing that from their current, oh, my kids used to go to, story time in the library. They don't know about, the opera being here or the courtyard thing. So something like that. My other concern is that these categories, if we reach people in each of these categories, I'm just going to tell you what I want more of in terms of, let me just see, workforce development. Oh yeah, you need to do more of that. That may or may not be a priority. I'm not gonna say it's not something we don't do.
Right.
But if we go to each of these groups and say, what do you wanna see? So I was thinking, like, when I thought of the partners, I was thinking, clearly the Boston Foundation is a partner. The Bar Foundation is a partner. Grove Hall is a partner. There's we have a lot of different partners who, as opposed to just the categories of partnerships, of programming. To me, those are program areas versus partnership. And I'm just thinking out loud.
Yes, perfect. This is exactly what we
know.
Yeah.
But that's just.
Well, it's what you said, and also what you had just said too, is like something that I learned from one of my library mentors a long time ago, when I'm talking to potential partners, leaders in city organizations, is don't say what you want from the library, what do you need from the library? As soon as you say library, they're gonna go like this. What are you struggling with now? What do you need? What are the things you look for? And then we, as the library, can determine, oh, is that something we can
How we make
work with you on, or it's, because once, like I said, once you say, what do you need from the library, they immediately shrink it down to.
Well, we give them a vision of the library, of what libraries, I mean, I keep coming back to, we're trying to become a 21st century urban library.
We are.
Yeah, but what does that mean? And if we are, tell me, what are the key elements of it?
Sure.
What are the
You know,
needs?
what's the needs that we're building?
So is this part of the exercise to determine partners we need early in the strategic planning process to make it more robust? Or is it about identifying partners that we will work with in execution of the strategic plan? Because I think those are two different questions.
Sell our strategic plan to them,
Sure.
is that, yeah.
And to create a buzz around the city about the library.
But you guys are used to getting feedback, they're self-serving. You know, sort of that in many ways will probably end up partly rejecting. But I assume you'll take it and, I mean, because that's gonna happen, you know, it's.
We want self-service. We wanna know what people want.
Right,
Yeah.
but I mean, Scylla's point, we do wanna know that, but I mean, to her point, it's one thing for patrons of the library to whatever. It's another thing for an organization that works in workforce development. I would love other organizations to be doing more work in that area, but it's not realistic that we would do the work. So I mean, it's just not every piece of feedback is equally valuable, or is, you know, it doesn't mean we wouldn't consider it, but.
I'm sure you'll.
Our request today is really a big brainstorming exercise of who do we know in our network? And I think to David's point, we don't necessarily need to categorize them in today's session or in your ideation, in your brainstorming. We're list making. And the hope is that in that list making, that out of that will reveal the approach and the prioritization of who on this list is going to be the most beneficial early in the process, and how do we want to engage to get the feedback we need to inform the work?
Yeah, I think what I heard you say earlier, Margaret, which resonated with me, was that we probably do want to get a little farther along the process. I think you said you want to get about a third of the way more, but whatever the right percentage is, we want to have a sense of where we're headed. And then I think the initial step is probably to come up with a list of 10 or 15 key stakeholders that we can hopefully share our initial thinking with, see what people are excited about, use that to help refine. And there's probably a broader set of stakeholders that need to act as evangelists once we actually land the strategy.
Jonathan, you mentioned media and then said no more. Would you like to say more about that?
Well, it was just something that occurred to me when we were talking, because I do feel like the studio that exists on Boylston Street, it's great for WGBH, it's great for Jim and Marjorie and for Jared, but what is it doing for the library itself? And on top of that, partnerships with every print and broadcast media outlet in this market is definitely someone that the library should be partnering with.
Especially if we believe that one of our biggest operational challenges is getting the word out about the profile of the 21st century library, plus all the things that are on offer.
Exactly. We were talking about communication.
We approved the contract, we talked a lot about that. Great. Right?
Yes?
Well, what do you guys think about Beckman? You know, are they a partner?
Sorry, who is that, just for my notes?
Walking around the council.
They could be an informant, I don't know if they're.
Informant, you would interview them and ask them.
It's the.
So, Black Economic Council of Massachusetts.
A Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, that was one of mine.
You know, that's right next to the Nubian Square folks.
Nicole.
Grace Boston.
Embrace, yeah.
Massachusetts. Should we start writing stuff down?
Yeah.
I mean, it would take me 5 hours.
Yes, I'm gonna send you a spreadsheet later.
Yeah, is this possible, is it possible to do this online? If it could be
Actually, we can send out.
something that literally would take me probably well.
That would be fabulous. And we can actually send out like a Google sheet that y'all could use live and just plug in. That would be fabulous.
But we can also just turn it in and be done.
Yeah. And you can be like Heidi and turn it in.
Okay. Yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at the time, again, the point of this part of the conversation was to have the exact conversation we are having, just to be clear. Who should we engage? Who shouldn't we engage? How should we engage them? The notes I've been frantically will inform some of the questions that we will do. I think the Google Sheet sounds like a great idea if we agree that it's okay to see what other people are writing.
Yes.
Okay, which would be the pro and con versus an anonymous feedback, but I think the Google Sheet would also save us the steps of retyping it out in 2 lines. So our mandate, we will follow up. We have 2 or 3 questions we didn't get to that are simpler questions. We would just love your individual opinion on that we will put in a survey, and we will send the link to the Google Sheet to start working on this massive list. We will put a deadline on it, probably of 1 to 2 weeks, understanding that we need to keep this moving and also summarize that up.
And plan, because this work.
To engage these groups. Before we sort of close out today, any final questions for our team? We'll also be around for a few minutes following this session. Our next session, we are targeting to schedule something, Pamela and I are working on it towards the end of April as a rough target to come back with this group. I see some of the faces. It may bleed a bit, but no, we are trying to nail down the date of our next session in the next week or 2. So that you'll have that in calendars to aim at.
I can add to that, we are trying to engage all of the external partners as well, the fund, and all of those things will be around the same timing. So when I send out a couple of dates, I do ask for your cooperation that you respond fairly quickly so that we can land
Nail these
spots on the calendar and plan around.
Okay, thank you.
I have a more general question, which is, what do you need as committee members to feel informed? You know, so you're getting meetings that, I mean, for me, I like this kind of a format. And I want to be respectful of people's time, and that's, I know that's one of the things that you talked a lot about in the pre-planning. But what, you know, this, you know, I feel that we're all learning together. And for us to be able to, you know, have a common language will facilitate our ability to do this work. But I just don't, you know.
I
don't know.
wonder, I feel like a little bit what's missing a little bit, and for those of us who are on the board of trustees, and I've been on for several years, it's like the balance when you're doing a strategic plan between the forward thinking and aspirations and all of that, but setting the table a little bit with understanding of what even how does the library get funded? Maybe some basic things that I'm concerned are missing a little bit from here. And, you know, I don't expect this group to have, to be able to need to hear the detail that the Board of Trustees hears, but I do feel like it might be helpful to the group to kind of understand some of the framework of that the library sits on, even if we decide to punch through that frame in parts.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I mean, an excellent point, and putting into context the current state, not just, you know, we do all these programs, but really understanding where's the funding mechanisms, what is the operating system behind our current state, I think is a really interesting thing. And I think I appreciate it very much because I think it's something that a lot of libraries in strategic work don't do. And it's the one thing and the one thing only that at the end you really need to know in order to make the operating system work. So yes.
It's also what is the baseline that we're starting with in April of 2024, upon which this emerging plan will take us forward from. But you have to know where you're starting and know where you're going.
I apologize, I have to.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We either get pulled together literally a 3-pager or spend 20 minutes at the next session, setting the table a little bit, giving some context to the conversation.
Because that's what Dr. Wu asked, what are the externalities, what's
Right,
happening
right.
here, what is the library position? I mean, not everybody heard the mayor's state of the city. Not everybody knows the various work streams that are under health and human services.
How does the city work?
Right.
Even how does the city work? without a free page? I'm the naive yorker.
4 hours the next meeting. This time.
I think this has been a really rich conversation. I'm grateful, very grateful for everyone who came today, and I'm also excited about this group continuing to meet more regularly. I think it would be good for the process for us to have a more regular cadence, and to Priscilla's point, to be a bit more deliberate about the pre-meeting materials that we provide. Because this is a really key group of stakeholders that are very invested in the process, and I think we should try to leverage the expertise and experience that people have.
And the passion and even the request y'all are stating in the room about learning more, knowing more. It's really, I always think about these kinds of sessions as the New Yorker talk of the town, where they do the little libs as if you're like a voyeur and something really important happening. And I think, to me, this is what this moment feels like. This is the beginning of something extremely important that you all have demonstrated a willingness to take that responsibility. It's gonna have impact far beyond our generation. So your questions are helping us frame the work so that your decision-making process is as informed as it can be.
On that note, realizing that we're transforming the world, so we'll fire. I think we have a new business placeholder. I'm guessing that maybe there aren't any other points of business from the committee to share at this point. So anything else, Margaret or Aaron or Patricia, that you wanted to cover?
This was great.
So we'll be in touch about cadence and preparation for the next meeting, but on behalf of the whole committee, thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for spending so much time and being so engaged. And thank you to the Margaret Sullivan and Gensler team. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second? Hi. What's your name? Thank you, sorry.
I'm actually headed to London.
I'm worried to find out some. But I grew up where you would.
Oh, you are, maybe?
Maybe.
I'm like, I heard a vote. It's a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, I was thinking.
It's funny, I'm sorry.